Hi, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative, you just have to be you. Because here we're going to explore ideas, methods, to make it easier for you to make transformative decisions, the kind of decisions we need, the kind of decisions that is going to enrich the way you live, the way you work, and the way you thrive in Vermont. Now, today we're going to talk about the millennial X generation. You heard a lot about what I talked about. I talked about them because if we don't get them to come here and live here, these 26-year-old to 41-year-old millennial X generation, we're going to be in trouble. Now, many of you have told me, well, you know, they're elitists, they're entitled, they're professional students. Look, they may be all those things, which they're really not. Really, those conversations are really conversations you'll hear between the older generation and the younger generation. There's always an argument because the younger generation will blame the older generation for the problems, and the older generation will look at the younger generation and say, no, it's your fault. Whatever the case might be, we need them here, okay? So that's not the case. Now, many of you have said to me, well, you know, if we don't need more people. We don't need more people. If we get more people, we're going to have higher taxes. We're going to have more problems. That's not true. In actuality, if you don't get more people, if you don't get young people coming here, living here, being consumers, opening businesses, okay, and working here, we're going to be in trouble. That's going to happen. Not that they're going to come and cause problems. If they don't come, that's when you get the problem. Now, I want to give you an example of, maybe it'll be better understood why I'm talking about the importance of having this generation to come here. Now, let's assume, right now we know that Vermont, more people die in Vermont than are born. Suppose it's a closed system, which meant that more people are dying, nobody's coming in, nobody's going out. What would happen? A closed system with just dying people and us. What would happen initially, well, of course, would be the idea that the population would diminish, okay? Now, obviously. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean when the population diminishes? Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means there's less of a workforce. Now, without a lake force, how are we going to sustain our businesses? How are we going to sustain our tourism, which is 8% of our gross product, okay? How are we going to do it? Who's going to do it? Who's going to man the restaurants? Who's going to be the servers? Who's going to maintain the snow areas, okay? Now, the next thing that will happen is there won't be any just services, like electricians and carpenters. There'll be no business for them, so they'll leave. There won't be any. And the ones that stay will charge more. It'll be expensive as heck. Business, the same thing. Business will go out of business. They'll go out of business. And when they go out of business, those who stay in will be charging very high prices. It goes on and on. The state might even have to ration its services because there's nobody there now. Now you think that's crazy? It's happening now. Our downtown businesses are closing. Our schools are closing or they're coming together. You have businesses, nobody's coming in. People are not coming in. The 26 to 41 are not coming here. Our prices are going up. Our land prices, our house prices, we got the problem. Now, I know that a closed system is probably not reality. However, let me tell you this. If we don't get the millennials to come here, I can assure you that some of the consequences I just mentioned will occur, undebatable, will occur. Maybe it'll take a longer time, but it'll occur because it's occurring now. It's occurring now. So we have to get these millennials here. Now, how do we attract them? We attract them by knowing more about them, knowing their habits, knowing what they think, knowing what they want. Let me give you an example. If you're a hunter, many of you are, you have to know to be successful at hunting, right? You have to know the game. You have to know where they're walking, where they den, what times do they walk. The more you know about the game, the more successful you're hunting. Same thing goes for the millennials. The more we know about them, the more the habit, it's more easier for us to attract them, okay? So where do we start? Let's start with their parents, because their parents were boomers. They made a lot of change. The boomers, people born after 1946. That's their parents. Many of you are probably their parents, are millennials. Now let's look at the parents. These were the hippies. These were the peaceniks. These were the people that spent a lot of time in Volkswagens. Went to a Woodstock regatta, a musical regatta, where there were 400,000 people. No shooting, no killings, no fighting. They were peace people. But they made a lot of changes. Long mustaches, long hair. Okay, they made a lot of changes. These were the people that stood by the African American, while he tried to get, during the 60s, his share of the American dream. These are the people that protested the Vietnam War, and 50,000 of them died. So they made changes. They were politically active. They were very politically active, and they were the first people to tell us about the impact we were making on our environment, the negative impact. They were the first people to tell us. Now, they made changes. Now, interesting enough, they got rid of the hypocrisies, they got rid of the absurdities in our society, and when they became leaders, they continue to make change. Now that we know them, how much, we have to ask ourselves, how much rubbed off on their kids? How much rubbed off on the millennials? Let's look at that. Here's what I believe. The millennials are very politically astute. They're going to get very involved in the politics and the laws and the policies of our nation and our state, because that's what their parents did. Okay. They condemn racism and prejudice. They embrace diversity, inclusion, equity. They embrace that. They want to see that. Okay. They're interested in issues. Obviously, the idea of global warming is highly interesting to them. Animal extinction, women's rights, those are going to be very interesting, and they're going to make changes in those areas, okay? And interesting enough, they were the first generation of the internet. They're going to use technology. They're technically savvy. They're going to use that. That's what we know about them. Now, I'm quite sure that that's what they are, and it's a reflection of their parents' backgrounds. Okay. Now, like their parents at that time, the boomers said, we don't trust anybody over 25. Okay, these people don't trust anybody. They say, we want transformative thinking. Don't give us old thinking to solve new ideas. We want new thinking. If you can't do it, we're going to do it. We're going to make the changes. Okay. Now, let's take another step. Finding out who they are, because again, when we know more about them, it'll be easier for us to attract them. Okay. Let's say that, what do we know? Let's ask them there's a lot of information that says, what about me? Reflecting their own opinions of themselves. Now, one of the things about them is they feel discarded, they feel betrayed. Their parents told them, work hard, get an education, go to college, you'll get out, you go into the world, and you'll have a house, you'll have a wife, and you'll have financial security. Well, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. They worked hard, they went to the college education, and they got out, and they found that the jobs are not so easy. The highly technical jobs are not so easy to get. So many of them are doing menial tasks. They found out that they have loans, school loans, that they don't know how they pay. So it forces them to be somewhat depressed because they're going back home because there's no way to live. They can't buy a house because it's too expensive. It's too expensive. So what? They feel betrayed. That's a fact. Now, they owe money, and they want to be interesting. They want to be entrepreneurs. Many of them, on a big scale, have become entrepreneurs, but they failed. They need help. They need help being entrepreneurs, because they went in, they want to go their own business, they want to call their own shots, they want to make their own decisions, and they didn't want to make out too well. Now, what do we do with all that information? What do we have to do with all that information? What does Vermont, as a state, have to project? It has to reflect in order to get them. If Vermont doesn't reflect their needs. It doesn't reflect their understanding. They're not coming here, and we're in trouble then. Our future's in trouble. We have to be able to reflect, change. We have to transform. As much as they're transforming or want to transform, we have to reflect that. Now, we have to understand, here's the things that I think we have to reflect. We have to reflect that we understand that they want a new American dream, that they want transformative thinking. We have to reflect it in our decisions, in our policies, in our laws. We have to reflect that. We have to have companies who are socially oriented. Companies not just interested in making profits, but companies who are going to make social contributions. They're interested in that. Then why do they want that? They want to work for companies who are socially responsible. Okay. They want daycare help. They need money help. They need housing help. We have to make situations available for them to overcome that. The daycare is very important. Housing, expensive. Even help with their loans. They need help. And if they don't get that from this state, they'll go somewhere else. And when they go somewhere else, our future's not well doing well. They want transformative thinking. Again, you heard me say this how many times? I'll say it again. You can't solve new ideas, new problems with old ideas. You need new ideas. You need transformative ideas, okay? And they want, again, a new American dream. The old American dream didn't work for them. Now, here's some final words about them. What do we have to do? We have to know them more than, because easiest to know them. We have to understand as citizens what is transformative thinking. We got to know what it is. Highly creative thinking. If they're going to want to transform the American dream, we have to learn how to transform ourselves, transform our policies, our decisions. Okay? We want our companies, and we have to have, they want companies that contribute, and the state has to have built in a campaign that reflects all these benefits, all these needs they want. An advertising campaign, right now, in my opinion, isn't. We talk a lot about our environment and our quality of life. Yes, that's a gimme, but it's not inclusive of all the things that they need, all the things that we have to say to attract them. All right? And the state has to spend more money. They're not spending enough money. They're not spending enough money to make real retention possible from a communication standpoint. All right? And finally, when we make decisions, state decisions, policy decisions, laws, personal decisions, business decisions, development decisions, in order to be transformative, in order to wake up one morning and somebody looks at Vermont and sees all these transformative things, all these transformative projects, the only way to do that, we have to ask ourselves two questions every time we make a decision, every time. One, is it transformative? Is it transformative? Two, will it attract millennials? If we get a no answer for any of those questions, for either of those questions, keep thinking, keep thinking. We have to ask those questions because we have to wake up one morning and we have to be transformed. And they will come because we will be reflecting them. Now, let me end with this. Let me talk about it. You're looking at a generation, the largest generation ever. They're 73 million strong. Even though they don't make as much money, they still consume $2 trillion worth of stuff, goods. They buy that. And the third thing about them is, in 8 years, by 2030, they will be the richest generation ever. They will inherit $63 trillion. Now you got the largest group, the group that spends money and wants major changes, progressive changes, and they have the most money. They're going to make changes. You can be bet on that. They're going to make changes. And we have to reflect those changes. If we don't, we're going to fall by the wayside. We need them to come here, to start businesses, to be citizens, to get involved in companies, to consume their products, to start new households, because we're old. We're old. We're over 50 years old on average in our state. We need youth. We need the millennials. You know a little bit about them. You have to start transforming how you think, how we do things, how we make decisions. It is absolutely imperative that we do this. Now, finally, we did it once before. We did it with the boomers. In the 1960s, Vermont had a theme that said the beckoning country. The beckoning country. They were promoting that. And the country said to the hippies, the boomers that are now here, okay, we understand what you want and we will respond to your needs. That's what the hippies heard. And they came. The 60s and 70s were good. We had a lot of immigration in our state because we were reflecting what that generation wanted. Now we have to, because right now we're not. The last 20 years, we're not getting, our population is going down. Young people are not coming in. Businesses are not coming in. We did it once before. We can do it again, ladies and gentlemen. We can do it again. Let's do it. With that, I'm Lou Scott, and this is the Geppetto Room, where you don't have to be creative to be creative. You just have to be you to make the better decisions. With that, until next time, thank you very much for viewing, and stay transformative.